Welcome back. I'm not sure what happened to our live feed, but we will try this again. And I don't know exactly where it cut off for you guys, where I was discussing, and I don't know how much of that you heard. So let me go back a little bit. He's talking about those who have been saved while they were in slavery or in servanthood. And he says, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You are free in Christ. You now have spiritual freedom. So even though you're a slave, you are free in that sense. And just serve the Lord as a slave if that's what where you are. Now he does not he says if you can become free and you can get your freedom, then certainly do that and use it for the glory of God. He's not telling slaves don't try to better yourselves. He says better yourselves if you can. If you're capable of getting yourself free, which was possible in first century Greco-Roman culture, then do it. But if you can't, that's fine too. You can still serve God. um, he talks to this masters or mentions to the masters that if you're a master and you're saved as a master, now you are God's slave or God's servant. So, yes, you're still a master and you'll still have slaves. You will treat them correctly, of course, at this point, because you are now God's slave. And so you're going to treat them correctly. But he says, whatever you are when God saves you, that's where God can use you. He can use you wherever you are. So, social position, your ethnicity, those are things that aren't really that important. Well, however, God has saved you, you can serve God there. So be thankful for that. And I think that does come into what he's going to talk about in the next section. And I think that's where he's saying this because in the next section, he's talking about those who are unmarried. And I'm not going to give this whole passage verse by verse. What I'm going to do is hit a couple of highlights. And the theme that I want to pick out of this, Paul argues that being single is a gift of God. And I think this is important for us as we look at marriage and consider this question. I think it's good for us to recognize that singleness is a gift of God. So he says, now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. So this feels like Paul is speaking with some apostolic authority, although some of this he clearly says is his opinion or his perspective. Jumping down to verse 27. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. This is consistent with what he said earlier about divorce. If you're married, don't try to get out of it. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. He's like, if you're single, I'm recommending you stay that way. However, you have not sinned. But if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. If a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. He says, if you're single, you don't need to get married. Now he says if you get married, it's fine. Nothing wrong in getting married, except you're going to have a lot of trouble. You've got issues, and you're going to have problems. I want to clarify that as we go down earlier. So verse 32, he says, "I would have you without carefulness." But in this case, carefulness doesn't mean being careful. It means being full of care, having lots of worries. He says, he that is unmarried cares for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married cares for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. So he says, a man who is married, he's worried about his wife, his family, his children. He's got lots of this world concerns for his family. The man who is unmarried doesn't have to be careful about the things of this world, so he can serve God entirely. There is a difference, the verse 34, there is a difference also between wife and virgin. The unmarried woman cares for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and spirit. But she that is married cares for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. So he says, if you're an unmarried woman, you can just focus on God. You've got no other concerns. If you're a married woman, you have a responsibility to your husband, to your children, to your family. And so he says, I speak this for your own profit, not to cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. So Paul says, I really think singleness is a good thing. Um, and now you have to put this in context. Paul says in it's not in this passage where I have here, but in this same area, he makes the comment in these times. These are times of difficulty. A lot of Christians did not have good situations in the world. If you follow Paul's life, Paul is serving God as a missionary. He's running out of cities, being chased out of cities. There are riots, there are stonings, there are shipwrecks, there's prison time. He even appears to have fought lions. It's probably just as well that he didn't have a family that was following him around. How would he have dealt with a family as he's running out of the city in the middle of a riot and he's, and the kids and wife are following him? You can see where he might say, you know what, the life I live, I'm a lot better off single. Um, and this actually has caused issues, and I don't want to get into this, but I'm going to throw it out there. There have been those in especially previous generations where husbands left their wives to go into, say, missions work, left their wives behind and went out into the mission field. And there's a lot of people who've condemned them for that, and maybe correctly, because Paul's arguing, this is a problem for a person who's married. Good evening, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us. This is a problem for a married man. He's got all of these other issues. Um, Now, Peter was married, and Peter traveled and took his wife with him. Paul tells us this later in 1 Corinthians. And Paul says this is all good. He doesn't in any way condemn Peter or say there's anything negative about Peter because he's bringing his wife along. James also brought a wife along. And there's nothing that Paul doesn't say anything negative about that. So Paul understands that, there were those who were married and their spouses traveled with them and all was good. But Paul says, I just have this perspective that being single is a good thing. Well, when we were in Taiwan, we saw this. The married the singles in Taiwan had advantages because we were working with college students. College students on holiday in Taiwan, especially, went on trips, almost never in Taiwan, usually overseas, and they often invited the single missionaries to go with them. And so the single missionaries would go on trips with the college students and have opportunity to interact with them and influence them and whatever. They never invited families to go with them. They never invited a family that I'm aware of to go with them on one of these trips. So there was an advantage to those who were single. Now, on the other hand, there was an advantage to those who were married, because most of the Chinese students that we were working with, and even some of the church people that we encountered, knew nothing of a Christian family. They were being saved out of paganism, out of whatever, their native religion, the ancestor worship and Buddhism and so forth, and agnosticism. They were being saved out of that, and they didn't know what it meant to have a Christian home. And so, while Debbie and I were not perfect, we were the only Christian families. There were a few others on campus. We were the only Christian families they'd ever seen. And so we became an example to them of Christian family. And they learned from us, and they were able to gain from us an insight into what it meant to have a Christian family. Fallible as we were, we at least gave them some understanding of what it was compared to what they had, which was pretty much nothing. The singles couldn't do that. The singles couldn't show them what a Christian family was like. So each of us had our advantages, both to reach the students, both single and married. And I think you can see that in the States as well. I will just make the comment that there are those who are single, and I think sometimes they will be defensive of being single, but they fail to use it for God. We need to, if those who are single need to use that singleness for God's glory. Those who are married need to use that marriage for God's glory. How do we take advantage of the fact that we are a team now? And how do we use that for God's glory? How do we support each other in serving God? How do we raise our children to serve God and support our children in serving God? Because that's now our responsibility. And I should clarify, I want to say, while they are still children, how do we turn them into service for God? How do we lead them into service for God as children? And then how do we then encourage them as they leave us to continue to serve God? Um, that's part of the married responsibility. If you're single, how can you take advantage of the fact that you are single so that you can serve God? Um, and that's what Paul's, I think that's why Paul talks about circumcised, uncircumcised, slave, and free in the earlier passage, because he's saying whatever status you are in when you get saved, use it for the glory of God. You don't need to change it. If you are Jewish, stay Jewish. If you're Gentile, stay Gentile. If you are a slave, stay a slave, unless you can free yourself. That's fine. If you are a master, stay a master. If you are married, stay married. If you're single, stay single, though you can get married. That's fine. You'll notice there's a little bit of caveat in a couple of these. But basically, whatever you have, use it for God's glory. That's the key, is your status, whatever your status is, use it for the glory of God. And so Paul is a defender of singleness, but he doesn't prohibit marriage. He doesn't malign marriage. He says that marriage is good. First, a couple of verses in chapter 7, he says, I say admits because he likes singleness, but he acknowledges that marriage is good and it is God ordained. So he acknowledges that, and yet he sees it from his own life, the values of singleness. I think as a church, we need to do that more often. And that's one reason I wanted to spend some time here, because I think as a church, we need to acknowledge the benefits of um, singleness as well as the benefits of marriage. I feel like in our culture, we tend to we need to defend marriage. And I think we do as a church defend marriage because it's under attack in our culture. But I think we also can defend holy singleness, pure singleness, as also being a gift of God. Um, and that leads us to the almost the end of the time. We got interrupted in the middle, so we lost some time. I have one more topic that I wanted to deal with, and probably we'll pick that up next week. And I keep saying chapter 6 and 7, and we've been in chapter 7 primarily, totally tonight, primarily last week. I want to go back to chapter 6 and pick up one more topic generally relating to marriage from chapter 6. So I am planning to do that next week. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for coming back after our interruption. Um, please have a good night's rest. Have a good Sunday tomorrow. And next Saturday is Thanksgiving weekend. I will let you know if I decide to do Bible study or not over the Thanksgiving weekend. I may, but I may not. So I'll post on the Facebook page whether we're going to have one next week. But welcome back whenever we have our next Bible study.